Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about loss and how loss in total can affect somebody on not just a personal level, but also just like a mental level. If that's a good way to describe it. But a lot of people see loss as like a bad thing in life. And I seriously believe that loss is probably one of the best things that you can have overall happen to you in life. It restructures your brain, and even though it can be hard at times to go through loss, it is really just a great way to start in life. And I feel like people that don't go through a big enough loss in life can be seriously underdeveloped socially and like mentally, and it honestly just also helps people gain like mental integrity, either going through hardships or just other things like that. And I feel like loss is a needed part of the world. And even though not all forms of loss are good, and you shouldn't always lose everything, like, say, a family member dies, or you break up with somebody, or you lose a loved one, or even if you're going through a really hard situation where all you feel like like this, for example, everything's just burning down around you, and it feels like it's really hard to get out of it. And things like that change people, and sometimes those changes can be good, and there can be bad loss at times. I mean, people sometimes just change in bad ways, and loss can have negative effects on people. But I feel like the good loss that we look for in life is something that everybody needs. And even if it is a bad kind of loss, I feel like even then, that can still help somebody and help them grow as a person and help them mature and learn to love. And loss can lead to love. I know it's hard to believe that and understand that at times, but honestly, I believe that a great enough loss can change somebody for the better. For example, a year or two ago, I was going through some hard times. I had multiple injuries back to back during sports, and at the same time, I was just losing the loved ones around me. A couple of family pets that I had died, and I was like I lost people that I loved. And when I was younger, I even lost my grandparents really close, like not even a year apart from each other. I lost three of my grandparents, and going through those hard times really helped shape me and just structure me into the person I am nowadays. And even then, like, I used to be a really emotional and aggressive person, and even at times, like, I just felt so negative, and like I just couldn't do anything good, like with my life, and I just felt like that loss that I had and how emotionally damaging it was to me at the same time as how like mentally restructuring it was just helped show me how like how much like life there is in the world. And that might be like hard to understand at points, but like I think loss is essential because even though loss can cause conflicts, like you can see it throughout even just like modern day media. Like the whole reason conflicts start is because somebody lost something or somebody took something from somebody, and like that can build like toxic foundations within society. If people believe that you were the reason they lost something, they will take it out on you. But even then, like I've watched shows like Full Metal Alchemist, Naruto, and other things, other animes like that. And in those shows, some of the heavy themes, or the reason they're going through these conflicts, is because these characters have lost things or people, or they've gotten into situations that somebody else has caused or that they've been a part of, and they hate each other for it. But without that loss, well, even through the loss, they still learn to work through it and get through it together. And even if sacrifices are made along the way or they lose people, it still encompasses an overall theme. Like, there's a quote from Full Metal Alchemist where they say, um, they talk about a lesson and how if you're strong enough to survive that lesson and get through it, you'll have a heart made full metal, or it's something like that. Uh, don't flame me if it's not, but it's just stuff like that. And when I was going through a hard time, I'd see like clips about it, and that's actually what got me into watching the show. And it's just the fact that a show like that, or even just like watching Naruto, like I know that can be corny or cringy to say, but like shows like that genuinely can change your viewpoint or how you look at things in the world. Like during the pain arc, at how he was preaching about how other people can't understand other people's pain unless they experience it. Like that was a huge takeaway for me because that seriously has strong implications like nowadays. Like a big factor of driving through empathy is with experiencing other people's pains. And if you haven't experienced someone else's pain, and it's even like I've even been taught this way to where you empathy is just a foundation of having something bad happen to you the same way it happens to somebody else. And I understand people say it's looking at it from other people's viewpoints or standing in someone else's shoes, but I believe that the only way to have true empathy is by truly going through the same thing as somebody else or into a situation that has similar outcomes or feelings as what someone else has gone through. And even then, like I don't believe in comparing like people's pains or what other people are going through and comparing that to each other. But if you also think of it that way, then we can't get anywhere together in the world because you must have empathy in order for us to just move on and progress like as a society because there's enough hate in the world to where we don't need for anybody to not be empathetic or not loving. Sorry, I'm getting a little off track, but we'll get back to the foundations of loss and the just key parts about it. But yeah, as I was saying, a big a big point for me in my journey through loss and anything bad that has happened in my life is I believe that not even just the way I look at things, but I feel like even like like appearance wise, loss can change the way that you look to other people, and specifically on a maturity level. Like I feel like when you try to have deep conversations like this, and you go through things like a strong feeling of loss, it just helps talk about it with other people and like, and I know loss like isn't a good thing to have happen to anybody, but I just feel like it's necessary. Like it's one of those absolutes in life that has to happen because you can't live without losing anything because nothing is infinite. Everything's finite, and at some point we will all lose something in life. It's like how the saying goes to where it's like the only thing promised in life is death. The same goes for loss. The only thing promised in life is losing. Because if you think about it, when you die, you lose your life. And so with that mindset, you will at some point lose. And even if you don't see dying as losing, it will still be an ultimate loss within your life. And that is just true for, I feel like, so many things. And I feel like living is just one of the best experiences anybody can have, or just like going through life and all the bads. Like I can't begin to tell you how much I've learned to appreciate the losses I've had in life, just from how utterly like view changing and um, just strong it can be on you and your character. Because seriously, like those times where I've gone through hardships or other things that have caused like severe mental strain on me, like I've learned to appreciate them. And I feel like if you don't learn to appreciate them, it can also be so toxic for your mental health. Because without that appreciation, you'll just marinate on the negativities about it, or just the utter like sadness that comes with it. Because when I used to look at loss like that, I was just such a negative person. Like I don't know how people like used to like me before I learned how to change my mindset and change the way I looked at stuff. And the big way I did that was through losing things that I loved. Like at multiple times I've gone through hard breakups or harsh losses in life, and it's been to where like I'd be crying for like weeks on end, or I'd even sometimes I still like think about it, and it's just kind of one of those things you have to live with in life. And even if sometimes it's hard to live with, it still makes you a better person overall. And I've even seen it to where like I've seen people change from things they've lost, or I've also seen them not. Because another thing that I want to talk about is I also think that some losses cannot change people because they're not active enough. Like I've seen guys go through breakups and do like awful things to their girlfriends, or vice versa. I've seen girls do awful things to their boyfriends, and then they lose the person. And sometimes that will change the person for the better, and sometimes it doesn't. And I've talked to people where they've been upset about a relationship they just got out of, or the fact that they feel like the other person doesn't care. And what I tell them is, I just believe that the loss, the the loss that the other person felt wasn't great enough, or that they didn't matter enough. And I don't say that to be like negative to them or be them down, but it's just I feel like if the loss is great enough, then they will change as a person, and that is coming from personal experience. At times, I wasn't the nicest to my significant others, and I can understand, like, if people view me in a way to where I'd be hypocritical saying any of this stuff. But seriously, like, after going through that and, like, not being the nicest during a relationship, and actually seeing how much that changed me and my mindset, like, I just genuinely believe that if the person mattered enough to you, or if you feel like you were disgusted enough with yourself. Not, that's not a good way to phrase it. I'd probably say if it disturbed you enough of how you acted or how you treated the other person, and you just had like a mental clarity to where your mindset just changed on how you were viewing the situation. I feel like that's a good way to describe it. Because that overall just like makes people change. And like that's like how you see people successfully get back together in relationships, or successfully move on in life from grieving, is from these losses. And and sometimes people don't. Like I've heard and I've read about people who have died from the losses they feel, or just up can't go on in life with it, and they in their lives, which is very sad. And that is probably the worst part about losing people, is the fact that that's even like a possibility that can happen. Because not only do you lose one person, but you also lose another from them taking their lives, and that can have like a domino effect on the people around them and anybody else that's in their life. And I feel like that's just one of the things that you got to watch out for when dealing with loss, and why it's also good to not confine yourself to be alone when you're going through a really hard time. And I think it's great to go out and talk to people. Like, I've had a therapist before, and that guy was awesome. He really changed my mindset on the world and changed how I looked at things. And he was a really great guy. And anytime I'd be going through a session with him, he'd be joking around, and he made me feel comfortable, and I told him what would make me feel comfortable, like, when talking about this stuff. And, like, it was crazy to me, because, like, I'd be sitting there going through this, and I'd just cry in front of this guy, and I always hated opening up to people, but he really, like, made me feel comfortable, especially people that, because I have a hard time opening to people that I don't even know. I mean, sorry, let me rephrase that. To people I do know, let alone people I don't. So the fact that he taught me how to be comfortable enough, and I felt comfortable enough telling him about it, and being able to be that open with someone also helped me get through it, because I learned that it was okay. And it's okay to cry. And I feel like some people don't understand that. It's probably less okay to have emotions like bundle up and just reminisce on them. And I mean, it's not bad to like sit in some emotions and process them, but it's not good to have unhealthy habits to where you sit on it and just like let it burn you in a way. And I feel like that's a toxic way of handling loss and just these negative things that can happen in life. And I think the positive way is to sometimes just like reminisce about things that make you sad enough to just like understand why it makes you sad. And that's just a big thing that plays like into handling loss, is being able to process it and understand what happened, why it happened, and just how it happened. Wait, I think I already said that. Nah. Anyway. But that's just kind of a focal point of it, is just trying to process through the hard feelings that come with loss, and just the overall like negativities that can like marinate with it. And I mean, it's also just hard to watch people go through loss. And back to the point I was talking about, to where you can see it like tear people down, is there's this strange phenomenon called heartbreak syndrome, I think. And people will just straight up die because they will have a loss that's so great it will literally just kill them. And I think their heart valves or something with their heart will deteriorate to a point to where it just can't heal, and they just die because their heart won't work. And it's just like it's crazy to see that happen. A big example of that is when the actor for Princess Leia, what's her, Carrie Fisher, I think, when she died, her mom, I think, died like 2 or 3 days later after her, because she had, like I said, the heartbreak syndrome, or it's something close to like, it's something close to like cardiac arrest, or I'd have to look into it, but it's just like stuff like that is just mind blowing to me, because the fact that it can be so mentally and emotionally overwhelming to where your body will just deteriorate from mental well-being and emotional well-being is just insane. But that's just kind of what goes on when you live. And I know that's like sad to say or sad to hear about, but I just feel like things like that must happen in order for people to understand loss. And I don't mean that in like I'm happy that happened kind of way, but I mean that in a like that's just a risk that's posed when you get connected to people and connected to things, is there's a chance that you will lose it. And like I know that's hard to like sit with and like when you really think about it, just marinate in. But it's just like one of those things that just goes on in life, and you kind of just sometimes have to let it just sit with you and marinate, and you just have to learn to love the people around you and learn that loss is an okay part of life. Like one of the really hard things for me was going through my grandparents' passings, because overall, like I was really connected emotionally to my grandparents, and just like going to the funeral and things like that, and the aftermath, and going to clean out their house afterwards was just really hard for me. And in the moment, I just wondered why it has to happen, and I would sit there and just bawl my eyes out and get overwhelmed by it, and just I'd ask God sometimes. I'd pray, and I'd wonder, why is this happening? Why does this have to happen? Ooh, sea turtles. And then I just had an epiphany after loss after loss after loss, and I realized that like these things must happen. And I also it took a while, but I came to terms with everything that happened, and it's just like it's just a part of grieving too. And because grieving is a big part of loss, and I feel like that's one of the key parts of it, is when you lose something near and dear to you, is what follows, or the aftermath after, is the grieving process. And I think that's just a really strong process that everybody has to go through, because one of the worst, no, the key foundation of negative emotions is found within grieving or losing something that you find precious to you. It's just, I just think it's like the root and cause that causes the effect. And because as people, if we didn't get emotionally like intertwined with each other, or if we didn't have the connections and bonds that we do, then we wouldn't have like a loss or understanding, or if we didn't take losing people to the degree that we do, we wouldn't have as close or tight as like of an understanding as we do with all these things. And that's one reason why loss is like a key part of life, and it's just something everybody has to go through, because like I've lost in certain aspects of my life before, either during competitions or when I'm playing games with my friends. And those are just like medial losses. Like those are little losses day to day that you can mediate from time to time. But I feel like those medial losses have absolute losses, which are on the other side of the playing field, to where it's big losses like loved ones that you lose, or loved ones, relationship losses, like hard things that just change you as a person. And I think that's what an absolute loss is something that will genuinely change your mindset and change how you feel and how you go about life. And even if you go through a loss that isn't like that, like that's still a loss. It still has meaning and value, and it still matters. It's just like I think those absolute losses are probably some of the most important ones because they really do like change people. Like I've experienced it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand. Yeah, that was a really dumb torch placement, but we're not going to talk about that. Cave. But yeah, it's just certain things like that. I just think are important, even though that's like a really hot take, and people can disagree with that. But like people change because of hard situations or hard feelings that have like really like dense ways of trying to like get through, or things that like take coping, or you have to you have to learn ways to like get through it or distract yourself. And I just feel like those absolute losses or hard losses just are an important part of life. Ooh, that's a big cave. But and it's like it is a crappy part of life, and the fact that people do have to lose things sucks, but it's just necessary. Absolutely. That's another thing is I feel like there are absolutes in life to where certain things like have to happen or like will be caused no matter what. And I also think loss is like well, got this dude. Okay, I'm actually just trapping myself. That's awesome. What the? I'm drowning. But yeah, and and we can talk about like the bad parts of loss. Like I've seen people that have lost things that they hold dear to them, and it just like corrupts their heart. And I know that's like a vulgar way of putting it, but it seriously does just like corrupt them, like as a person. They become mean and hateful, and they just like overall become a lot more negative. And it's like, yeah, things like that are just like that's not the good part of it. And I feel like that's why loss should be like taught, or I feel like people should be able to understand like why it is important and be able to come to terms and cope with it like on a wholesome level. And I honestly feel like that's one of like the more important things like socially or mentally that we should talk about in life, because like losing people or losing things is like just the foundation of life. You can't get connected with anything if you just like hold on. Let me rephrase this. You have to enjoy life and actually like love and connect with people. You have to be able to accept the fact that at some point you will lose that thing or person. And it's just like one of those things to where you can't just like go through life without being connected, or even like getting attached to things, which I know you're not supposed to, but like I feel like to a degree getting attached to things like isn't bad. Like there can be good applications of it. Like you can get attached to helping people, or get attached to doing a hobby, or something that you really enjoy, as long as it's like healthy and not bad for your health. I feel like things like that are like good in life. But like it's just a foundation